Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we cut through the noise and really dig into the fascinating stuff to make you well-informed. Today, we're jumping into something really rich, really complex. We're asking, what makes Egypt's people look so different? And this isn't just about, what you see on the surface. It's like a living map of human diversity, etched into faces over millennia. We're going to try and piece it together.
Yeah, and the source material we're working from today is pretty compelling stuff. We've got excerpts from this really comprehensive research document. It's very focused on the visual and genetic diversity of Egypt's population going back thousands of years. It gives you this, well, almost forensic look at how Egypt's unique geography and history have shaped its people. Their appearance becomes like a historical record.
Exactly. So our mission today is to get a handle on how geography, history, and just wave after wave of migration wove this incredible tapestry of Egyptian looks. Think of it as your shortcut to understand this unique cultural crossroads. We've got some surprising facts, maybe a little humor to keep you hooked. Okay, let's unpack this. Let's see how Egypt really is the crossroads. Written right there on people's faces. Okay, picture the scene. It's right from our sources. You're walking through Cairo's Khan El Khalili Bazaar. It's bustling, right? You smell the spices, hear the vendors, and you see people with that classic olive skin, sharp cheekbones, dark almond eyes, maybe arguing over some silverwork. But then you turn a corner and the picture kind of shifts. Suddenly you notice other Egyptians, some with noticeably lighter skin, maybe even hazel eyes, or a touch of auburn hair. It's immediate, a real contrast, just a few steps away. Makes you think, how does this all fit together?
And that visual journey, it absolutely continues if you head south. It's a visible shift.
No.
If you go down the Nile towards Aswan, past Luxor, you start encountering Nubian families. You see their rich, dark skin, sometimes a deep mahogany, bright eyes, these really warm, welcoming smiles. It speaks to a very distinct heritage. And the core insight here from the sources really hammers this home. You just cannot reduce Egypt's appearance to one image, one stereotype, one single look. It's more like a living, breathing tapestry, woven over millennia from migration, adaptation, interactions, always blending,
Yeah.
Not static.
Right. Now, when you think about it like that, it just clicks, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Egypt isn't just near a crossroads. It is the crossroads. Geographically, it's where Africa, the Middle East, the Mediterranean all slam together. You can only picture the currents of people, armies, traders, settlers flowing through, each leaving their mark, their genetic signature.
Exactly. And what's really fascinating, what the sources keep highlighting, is how these visual things, these physical cues, they line up so well with specific historical events and genetic markers. Each trait tells a bit of the story. Ancient movements, empires rising, falling. It feeds into modern identity. It's like reading a living document. So let's dive into some of those specific traits because, as you'll see, each one tells a really compelling piece of Egypt's story.
Okay, let's start with eye color, because the numbers here are, well, they're pretty surprising. They definitely challenge simple ideas. The research says, about 85 to 90% of Egyptians have brown eyes, which, okay, that's common worldwide, but a pretty significant chunk, 10 to 15%, show lighter shades. Hazel, green, even blue. And that's where it gets really interesting, the detail behind that number.
It really is. And this variation, the lighter eyes, it's especially noticeable up in northern Egypt, particularly around Alexandria. The sources directly link this to centuries of, intense contact with Greeks, Romans, Mediterranean traders, settlers, you name it, those busy ports, There was a genetic survey back in 2017 that noted Egyptians along the coast had significantly higher frequencies of certain alleles, different gene versions linked to lighter eyes compared to Upper Egypt.
Wow.
So, a Greek sailor's blue eyes from 2,000 years ago might sort of echo in someone walking around Alexandria today, challenges any idea of uniformity. And conversely, down south, Nubians and other southern Egyptians, almost universally deep, dark brown eyes. It's a really clear reflection of their deep African heritage shaped by the Nile.
So we're literally seeing echoes of ancient trade routes in people's eyes. It's incredible. But does that kind of visual marker, does it still impact how people see themselves or each other in Egypt today?
That's a really good question. And while modern Egyptian identity is definitely bigger than just these visual things, these historical legacies, they do play a sort of subconscious role. Like sometimes lighter features in the north might get subtly linked to a more cosmopolitan or maybe Europeanized image. It's not always conscious. While darker features in the south are deeply tied to that ancient Nile connection, the African heritage, it's less about open prejudice, more about the different stories people carry about their origins, reflected visually.
Okay. And then skin tone. That sounds like another big one. Another visual clue that maps onto geography and ancestry. clear north-south gradient, you said.
Absolutely clear. Up in northern Egypt, along the coast, lighter olive or fair brown skin is more common. Studies actually measure the melanin index, that's the pigment level, and it's about 15 to 20% lower there than in Upper Egypt. And it's directly linked to that history of intermarriage with Mediterranean groups, Greeks, Romans, Byzantines, later Arabs, Ottomans. They all brought different complexions into the mix. Then you move towards Cairo, Central Egypt. It's a real mix of shades. Light brown, darker tones. It reflects that intense blending, Arab, African, Mediterranean ancestries all coming together. A true melting pot. And then down in southern Egypt, Nubia-rich dark brown skin is prevalent. Directly linked to centuries of Nubian settlement, their deep ties to sub-Saharan populations, and just adapting to that intense sunlight. It's evolution in action. And what's really important, historians point out this north-south difference goes way back to pharaonic times. You see it in ancient artwork. Artists use different paint tones, different ochres to show northern and southern Egyptians. They saw this distinction thousands of years ago.
That's amazing, seeing that consistency across history. But were those ancient paintings always, like, totally accurate? Or maybe sometimes artists simplified things a bit?
That's a great point. Ancient art definitely had its own rules, symbolic meanings, styles. But the fact that you see these different skin tone depictions again and again across different eras, different types of art, it suggests there was a real visual difference they were capturing. It wasn't just artistic freedom. It likely reflected the visible diversity of the Nile Valley. It was kind of a visual map of identity, even back then.
Okay, right. Now let's talk hair.
Yeah.
Because Egypt's hair diversity sounds just as striking. It's definitely not one single type either. Wavy, coiled, another sign of that deep genetic blending.
That's right. The research finds these distinct patterns mirroring the other traits we've talked about. Wavy or straight hair, more common in the north, again linked to Mediterranean and Arab ancestry. But as you move towards central and southern areas, curly hair, even tightly coiled hair, becomes much more frequent, reflecting stronger sub-Saharan African genetic roots. Now, color-wise, it's mostly black across Egypt, but about 8 to 10% naturally have shades of brown or auburn, especially in the delta, the coastal areas. Blonde hair is pretty rare, but it's there, usually associated with more recent European mixing. What researchers find really remarkable, though, is the genetics behind it, the hair keratin genes in Egyptians. They show signatures from both African and Eurasian ancestry. That makes Egypt pretty unique in Africa for having such a wide natural range of textures. The sheer variety, from straight to coiled, all within Egypt. It really challenges simple ideas about African hair and highlights the continent's own diversity. It's a powerful visual.
So Egypt's hair isn't just diverse, it's almost like a miniature version of global hair types right there.
Yeah.
That really says something about its unique position.
Precisely. It's solid evidence of that constant flow, that integration of different gene pools, not just way back when, but continuing, creating this living library of human variation.
Okay, moving to height and build, the sources mention variation here too, adding another layer. So the average Egyptian man is about 172 centimeters, 5'7". Women around 160 centimeters, 5'3". But those are just averages, right? What are the interesting bits?
Yeah, averages hide the really interesting stuff. The details show deeper links to ancestry and environment. For instance, Nubian groups down south, often taller. Men average maybe 175 to 177 centimeters. That's linked to Nilotic influences. Those ancient populations adapted to the plains and rivers of the Upper Nile, often known for taller, leaner builds. Coastal Egyptians up north tend towards medium builds, maybe reflecting more city life, trading, compared to the harder farm work further south. And rural Upper Egyptians often have leaner physiques. Shaped by generations of farming, the hot climate, a slender build can be helpful there. There was even a nutritional study in 2018 showing regional differences in BMI. Urban Egyptians averaged higher diet changes, less active lifestyles maybe, while rural groups stayed closer to older norms. It shows how environment shapes us.
It's pretty amazing how geography, lifestyle, ancestry, they literally sculpt the body, height, build. It's a deep connection between the land and the people.
It really is. These aren't just random differences. They're rooted in long-term environmental pressures and genetic heritage. Egypt's population is like a dynamic case study in human biology.
Which brings us to faces, and this whole often pretty heated debate. Is there such a thing as a typical Egyptian look? Or is that just way too simple?
The answer from the research is definitely towards clear regional diversity. So any single typical look, it's not really helpful. Northern Egyptians, for instance, often straighter noses, maybe narrower faces, lighter complexions, again reflecting those Mediterranean links. Carenes, people in central Egypt. Living in that nexus, they tend to show more blended features. Oval faces, maybe almond eyes, medium brown skin, a real mosaic. And then southern Egyptians, Nubians. characterized by broader noses, maybe fuller lips, darker skin tones, reflecting that deep African ancestry. And the research stresses this mix. It often sparks controversy, especially when outsiders try to claim ancient Egyptians were fully African or fully Mediterranean. Historians say both arguments just oversimplify things. Ancient Egypt was always a meeting point, from day one, a dynamic, multi-ethnic place, not one single group. It defies easy labels.
So the whole idea of a typical look is kind of a trap, especially for a place like ancient Egypt that was built on being a crossroads.
Yeah.
It's like modern arguments try to force a uniformity that just wasn't there.
Exactly, and that's a key insight. Trying to pin down ancient Egyptians as one race misses the point. The Nile Valley drew people in, and its people were constantly shaped by that flow.
Okay, so if the physical traits are this diverse, what does it all mean for understanding Egypt's past, like written in their genes? It sounds like you could actually trace history through these features, like reading layers of time.
Precisely. Egyptians literally carry their history in their DNA. It's a multi-layered story. Let's look at the layers chronologically. Okay, Pharaonic times, 3000 BCE onwards, you have the indigenous Nile Valley people, strong North African Proto-Saharan roots, they're the foundation. Then the Greek and Roman periods, 332 BCE to 400 CE. Significant Mediterranean genes flow in. Settlers, especially in Alexandria, coastal cities. New genetic clusters form in the north. Think Greek soldiers, Roman officials marrying locals. Then the Arab conquests, 7th century, huge impact. Introduced substantial Arabian ancestry, reshaped language, religion, and the genetic landscape, especially central and northern areas. Lots of assimilation, integration. Fast forward to Ottoman rule, 16th and 19th century. Turkish and Balkan genes get added to the mix, particularly among the ruling classes, the elite, another subtle shift. And even French and British colonialism, 19th, 20th century. Shorter period, but left small, visible traces of European admixture. So genetic studies today estimate modern Egyptians carry about, say, 65–70% North African Middle Eastern ancestry, maybe 15–20% Sub-Saharan African, and 10–15% Mediterranean European. And crucially, these percentages show clear regional differences. That north to south gradient we talked about, it reflects all these successive waves.
That's a really profound way to see history, not just in books, but in the actual genetic makeup. Like every conquest, every trade route left a fingerprint that's still there.
It absolutely is. These aren't just dusty historical facts. They're living legacies, showing this continuous dynamic mixing of people over thousands of years.
Okay, so given all this complexity, all these layers, it's maybe no surprise that Egyptian identity gets debated so much, globally even, especially those arguments. Were ancient Egyptians, Black Africans, or Mediterranean? It feels like people are fighting over who gets to claim this amazing civilization.
It's exactly that, a global flashpoint, a proxy battle over cultural heritage, you could say.
Yeah.
Now, the nuanced scientific view, looking at ancient DNA, like that big study in Nature Communications in 2017, it found ancient Egyptians, especially from Middle Egypt, were genetically close to people from the Levant and North Africa. But it also showed that sub-Saharan influence, while always there, increased more strongly in later centuries. So it was a dynamic process, gene flow changed over time. It's not as simple either. So you have some scholars emphasizing Egypt's deep African roots, its connection to the continent. Others highlight the equally important Mediterranean and Middle Eastern ties. But what's really crucial, I think, is that for modern Egyptians themselves, this whole argument often feels like outsiders trying to define them, define their history, their identity, instead of letting Egyptians articulate it.
And surveys seem to back that up, right? Our sources mention most Egyptians just identify as Egyptian. They kind of reject both extremes that outsiders push.
They do, and it says a lot about the emotional side of identity for Egyptians. Appearance isn't just biology for them. It's tied up with pride in their unique past, their immense history, their resilience as a nation. Many actually celebrate their diverse looks. They see it as proof that Egypt was always this place where cultures met, this ancient melting pot. Now, are there internal stereotypes? Yes, unfortunately, sometimes. Someone with lighter features might get told they look too European. Someone with darker features might face subtle prejudice in cities. These things exist. But despite those divides, that national identity seems incredibly strong. A Pew survey in 2020 found over 85% of Egyptians see their culture as unique, distinct from both Africa and Middle East. They position themselves proudly at their own intersection. So if you connect that to the big picture, you see diversity isn't a weakness for them. It's very much a defining strength, a testament to their history, their ability to absorb and blend so many influences.
That's a really powerful way to put it. And it brings us right to the main takeaway from the research today. Scientists have found Egypt has more genetic variation inside its borders than whole regions of Europe. Just think about that. That's why Egyptians look so different. They aren't one type. They're a spectrum, shaped by geography, by history, by thousands of years of migration.
It absolutely nails Egypt's role as a true confluence of civilizations, a unique spot where Africa, Asia, and Europe have always met, mixed, and created something new. And that whole story is embodied dynamically in its people, from Nubia in the south to the Mediterranean coast.
So next time you meet someone from Egypt, maybe don't ask what Egyptians are supposed to look like. Instead, maybe see them as living history, a powerful reminder that identity is rarely simple, rarely fixed. It's always evolving, carrying generations of stories and their features. And here's something for you, our listener, to think about after we wrap up. Do you think Egypt's incredible diversity strengthens its claim as this true crossroads, letting it bridge continents and cultures? Or does it maybe, in some ways, complicate or blur its identity in today's complex, often nationalistic world? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Egypt's human tapestry. We hope you keep exploring with us.